The universe was dying one species at a time. In the cold darkness between stars, a desperate message traveled at the speed of light, carrying the last hope of an entire civilization. The Vialian Council had ruled peacefully for over 3,000 years. Their people were tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like moonlight on water. They had 4 arms and moved with the elegance of dancers. Most importantly, they had never hurt another living being. Violence was not in their nature. They grew their food from special plants, built their cities from living trees, and solved conflicts through gentle discussion. But the Drachner Empire had found them. Elder Mirren stood in the ruins of what had once been their greatest city. Smoke rose from collapsed spires that had taken centuries to grow. The beautiful singing crystals that filled their world with music lay shattered on the ground. In the distance, massive ships blocked out the sun. These were not ships built for exploration or trade. These were designed for one purpose only, to hunt and kill. Send the message again, Mirren whispered to his aide. His voice carried the weight of watching his entire civilization crumble. The young Vialian's hands shook as he operated the communication device. Elder, we have sent it to every corner of the galaxy. No one responds. No one cares. Mirren closed his eyes. Through the telepathic link that connected all Vialians, he could feel his people's fear. Millions of voices crying out in terror as the Drachner hunted them for sport. Children hiding in caves while their parents were dragged away. Entire cities going silent one by one. The Drachner were perfect predators. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in black scales that could deflect most weapons. Their teeth were designed to tear through metal. Their eyes could see in complete darkness. They had evolved on a world where only the strongest and most vicious survived. For 2,000 years, they had swept across the galaxy like a plague, enslaving or destroying every species they encountered. But they did not just conquer. They enjoyed the hunt. They would land on peaceful worlds and release their prey, giving them a head start before the real horror began. To the Drachner, other species were nothing more than entertainment. Elder, the aide's voice broke. The transmission is ready. Mirren nodded and stepped toward the recorder. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky as another section of the city fell. He could hear the screams of his people, could feel their terror through the mental link they all shared. Soon, that link would go silent forever. To any civilization receiving this message, Mirren began, his voice steady despite everything. My name is Elder Mirren of the Vialian Council. We are dying. For 300 years, the Drachner Empire has hunted us across 17 star systems. They have destroyed our worlds, enslaved our children, and turned our people into trophies for their amusement. He paused as another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow. We were once 12 billion strong. Now we number less than 50,000. Our ships are broken. Our weapons cannot harm them. Our diplomats have all been killed. We had nothing left except this message in the hope that someone, somewhere, still believes that innocent life has value. In the background, the sound of Drachner war cries echoed through the streets. They were getting closer. We offer everything we have to whoever can save us. Our complete scientific database. Our medical knowledge that has conquered disease and extended life for thousands of years. Our agricultural techniques that can make dead worlds bloom with life. Our art, our music, our poetry. Take it all. We only ask that our children be allowed to live. Tears ran down Mirren's face, though his voice remained strong. Through the mental link, he felt thousands of his people adding their own desperate prayers to his words. We know this message will reach species far more advanced than us. We know you have your own problems, your own wars to fight. But please remember that we are not asking you to save us for free. We are offering the accumulated wisdom of 3 millennia, technologies that could advance your civilization by hundreds of years. All we want in return is the chance to exist. The building shook again. This time, chunks of ceiling fell around them. The aide grabbed Mirren's arm, but the elder shook him off. If you are receiving this transmission, then you have already achieved faster-than-light travel. You have looked up at the stars and decided to reach for them. That makes you explorers, dreamers, builders of great things. The Drachner destroy. You create. Please, Do not let them destroy us too. The message ended just as Drachner's soldiers burst through the door. But by then, it was already racing across the galaxy at light speed, carrying the Violians' last hope to every corner of space. Most species who received it simply deleted the file. The Drachner were too powerful, too ruthless, too perfect at what they did. No one wanted to make enemies of the galaxy's apex predators. But in a small corner of the Milky Way, on a little blue planet that most galactic civilizations considered uninhabitable, someone was listening. The alarm that changed everything rang at 3:47 a.m., Earth Standard Time. Lieutenant Commander Jake Mitchell had been on the night shift at Cheyenne Mountain's Deep Space Communications Array for 6 months, and most nights were dead quiet. Humanity had only cracked faster-than-light travel 18 months ago, and the galaxy seemed pretty uninterested in making friends with the new kids. But tonight was different. What the hell is this? Jake muttered, staring at his screens. Data was pouring in from every direction. Not the usual background radiation or random stellar noise, but actual structured communication. Someone was broadcasting on every frequency they could find. He ran the signal through their translation software, a piece of tech they'd reverse-engineered from a derelict alien probe found drifting near Jupiter. The computer worked for several minutes, cross-referencing linguistic patterns and mathematical constants. Then words began appearing on his screen. Jake read the first few lines and felt his blood turn cold. He reached for his phone with shaking hands. Admiral Hayes? Sir, I'm sorry to wake you, but you need to get down here right now. We've got a situation. 2 hours later, the emergency council room at Earth Defense Command was packed. Admiral Robert Hayes sat at the head of the table, his gray hair messy from being woken up. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space, military commanders, scientists, politicians, and corporate leaders. Dr. Lisa Wong, Earth's top xenobiologist, had spent the last hour analyzing everything they knew about the Violians. According to their own databases, they're completely peaceful. They've never even developed weapons of war. Their entire civilization is built around growing things and taking care of each other. And the Drachner? Asked General Patricia Foster, head of Colonial Defense. Dr. Wong's expression darkened. Apex predators from a Class 12 death world. That means a planet even more hostile than Earth. If you can believe that, they've been conquering the galaxy for 2,000 years. No one has ever successfully fought them. Captain Troy Adams, fresh back from humanity's farthest colony world, leaned forward. So why should we care? We've got our own problems. Food shortages on New Shanghai, pirate attacks on the shipping lanes, that alien disease outbreak on Colony 7. The room fell silent. It was a fair question, and everyone knew it. Humanity was still struggling to manage a handful of colony worlds. They had 37 ships total, most of them converted cargo haulers and research vessels. Earth's entire space navy wouldn't last 5 minutes against a real military force. Admiral Hayes stood up slowly, showed them the rest of the message. The holographic display lit up with images from the Violian databases. Cities that looked like they'd been grown rather than built, reaching toward the sky like massive trees. Families of four-armed beings tending gardens that could feed thousands. Children playing games that involved creating art with their minds. Then the images changed. The same cities in ruins. Families torn apart. Children cowering in caves while monsters hunted them for sport. They offered us their complete technological database. Hayes said quietly, medical knowledge that could add centuries to human life. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger forever. Energy systems that could power our entire civilization without burning a single piece of coal. Commander Nathan Brooks, the fleet's chief engineer, whistled softly. Admiral, I've been looking at their technical specs. Their ships use some kind of biological technology one don't even understand. And their medicine, he shook his head. They don't have cancer. They don't have heart disease. They don't even have the common cold. But can we actually help them? Asked Dr. Helen Carter from the Colonial Medical Corps. I mean, realistically, these Drachners sound like they're built for war, and we're still figuring out how to keep our own ships from falling apart. Hayes walked over to the display, showing Earth's location on the galactic map. Humanity's little corner of space looked incredibly tiny compared to the vast territories controlled by other species. "Here's what nobody else in the galaxy knows about us," he said, pointing to the small blue representing Earth. "They classify our homeworld as uninhabitable. They can't understand how intelligent life could possibly evolve on a planet with shifting continents, ice ages, hurricanes, volcanoes, and 1,000 different ways to die before breakfast." He turned back to face the room. "What they don't understand is that surviving Earth made us into something they've never seen before. We're not just predators. We're persistence hunters. We don't give up. We don't back down. And we sure as hell don't let bullies pick on people who can't fight back." Captain Amy Richardson, who'd served in every major human conflict of the past decade, stood up. "Sir, with respect, we've got families to think about. If we pick a fight with these Drachner, they might come looking for us next. They're going to come for us eventually anyway." Hayes replied, "That's what apex predators do. They expand until they run out of prey. The only question is whether we face them now, when we have allies, or later, when we're alone." The debate continued for hours. Some argued that humanity couldn't afford to get involved in galactic politics. Others pointed out that the Vialian technology could advance human civilization by centuries. But in the end, it came down to something much simpler. Captain Mike Johnson, the oldest ship commander in the fleet, finally broke the deadlock. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the old days, back when people would travel hundreds of miles just to help a neighbor build a barn. He said that's what made us human, not our intelligence or our tools, but our willingness to help people who needed it." He looked around the room. "These Vialians need help. Simple as that." The vote was unanimous. 37 ships, 15,000 volunteers, and humanity's first step into galactic politics. None of them knew they were about to change the balance of power in the universe forever. The jump from hyperspace always made Captain Lisa Parker's stomach turn, but this time was different. This time, she wasn't just arriving at a new star system. She was dropping into the middle of a genocide. The Endurance emerged from its faster-than-light jump at the edge of Vialian space, and the first thing Parker saw, Mayer grabbed the armrest of her captain's chair. Massive ships hung in the void like black spiders, each one the size of Manhattan. They weren't sleek or beautiful like the science fiction movies back home. They were ugly, brutal things covered in spikes and weapon ports. "Jesus," whispered Sergeant David Wilson from a station. "Are those the Drachner ships?" Commander Rachel Foster was already working at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. "I'm reading 17 capital ships, maybe 100 smaller vessels. And Captain," her voice caught, "I'm detecting debris fields. Lots of them." Parker's jaw tightened. "Show me." The main screen shifted a focus on one of the massive alien vessels. At first, Parker thought it was some kind of industrial operation, streams of material flowing into the ship's cargo bays, efficient and organized. Then she realized what she was looking at. "Those aren't raw materials," she said quietly. "Those are people." The Drachner harvester ships were processing entire cities. Massive tractor beams pulled buildings straight up from the planet's surface, while smaller ships darted around like sharks, hunting anything that tried to escape. Through the ship's telescopes, they could see Vialians being herded into transport containers like cattle. But it was worse than that. The Drachner weren't just taking prisoners. They were hunting for sport. Lieutenant Tom Anderson, monitoring enemy communications, looked up from his station with a sick expression. "Captain, I'm intercepting their transmissions. They're keeping score. They're competing to see who can bag the most kills." On the tactical display, small Drachner fighters chased fleeing Vialian transports through an asteroid field. The aliens weren't trying to disable the ships. They were playing with them, herding them into dead ends, taking careful shots to cripple engines so the prey couldn't escape, but could still run. Parker had seen combat before. She'd fought pirates in the outer colonies, dealt with corporate mercenaries trying to steal mining rights. But this wasn't war. This was something else entirely. "Ma'am," Foster called out, "I'm picking up a distress signal. Weak, but it's definitely Vialian. Bearing 27 Mark IV. Take us in," Parker ordered, "and keep our weapons powered down. Last thing we want is to start a fight we can't finish. The Endurance moved carefully through the debris field, dodging chunks of what had once been Violian cities. Parker tried not to think about how many people had lived in those buildings. The distress signal led them to a small asteroid, barely large enough to hide a shuttle. There, Wilson pointed at a scanner. Something's inside that rock. Artificial hollow, maybe big enough for a small ship. Parker activated the communications array. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Lisa Parker, the Earth ship Endurance. We received your distress call. Please respond. For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, not speaking English, but the translation software kicked in automatically. This cannot be real. You are from the Death World, the Forbidden Planet. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Parker replied. We're here to help. Another pause. Then, please do not let them detect you. The Drachner will kill you instantly. Your ships are too primitive to fight them. Let us worry about that. Can you meet us face to face? 20 minutes later, Parker stood in the Endurance's main conference room as a hologram flickered to life. The being that appeared was nothing like she'd expected. Elder Keth was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. His 4 arms moved in patterns that somehow conveyed meaning even without words. But what struck Parker most was the sadness in his large, dark eyes. This was someone who had watched his entire world die. You are predators, Keth observed, studying Parker's forward-facing eyes. Your species evolved to hunt and kill. Yet you came when we called for help. We heard you needed assistance, Parker said simply. Keth's form flickered as the hologram struggled with his emotional state. Captain Parker, you do not understand. The Drachner are perfect killers. They have conquered 1,000 worlds. They are apex predators from a planet so hostile that most species consider it uninhabitable. They cannot be defeated. Sergeant Wilson, standing behind Parker, almost laughed. Elder, with all due respect, you should see our planet. We got hurricanes that can level cities, earthquakes that crack continents, and animals that hunt in packs just for fun. Your world is classified as Class X, Keth continued. Nothing intelligent should be able to survive there, let alone thrive. When we first detected your signals, we assumed they were coming from some kind of automated probe. Commander Foster stepped forward. Elder Keth, how many of your people are left? Perhaps 50,000, scattered across a dozen hidden refuges like this one. Every day, the Drachner find more of us. Every day, more voices go silent in our collective consciousness. Parker felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. They're hunting you to extinction. It is what they do, Keth replied sadly. They have done it before. They will do it again. That is why no species in the galaxy will help us. The Drachner are simply too powerful, too ruthless. Elder, Parker said quietly, I think you need to understand something about humans. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being the biggest or the strongest. We did it by being stubborn, by refusing to give up, and by taking care of each other. She gestured toward the tactical display, showing the ongoing massacre. What we're seeing here isn't strength. It's cowardice. Any animal can pick on something weaker than itself. The Drachner aren't apex predators. They're just bullies. Keth's 4 arms moved in what Parker was beginning to recognize as confusion. But, Captain, your fleet is so small. How can 37 ships stand against an empire that spans half the galaxy? Parker smiled, and for the first time since arriving in this system, it reached her eyes. Elder, you're about to learn something that the Drachner never figured out. We're not just apex predators from a death world. She turned to Foster. Send a message to Admiral Hayes. Tell him we found the survivors, and we've seen enough. It's time to show these bastards what humans do to bullies. We're persistence hunters with a moral code. The first battle began exactly 72 hours after Admiral Robert Hayes received Captain Parker's message. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the Tylon system like a pack of wolves entering a sheep pen, except everyone thought the wolves were the sheep. The Drachner response was immediate and predictable. 15 massive warships turned toward the small human fleet, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. On the bridge of his flagship Resolute, Admiral Hayes watched the alien vessels approach with the confidence of apex predators who had never met anything that could challenge them. "Sir," Commander Patricia Clark reported from her station, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies. The translation software is having trouble with some of it, but the general message seems to be laughter." Lieutenant Tom Anderson looked up from his communications console, shaking his head in disbelief. "Admiral, they're actually mocking our ships, calling them primitive scrap metal. One of their captains just placed a bet on how long we'll last." Hayes smiled grimly. "How long did they bet?" 3 minutes, sir." "Well then," Hayes said, settling back in his command chair, "let's make sure they lose that bet. All ships implement Darwin Protocol." What happened next had never been seen in galactic warfare before. The human ships didn't spread out in a defensive formation like every civilized species would do. Instead, they dove straight toward the nearest star, using its gravity well to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. The Drachner had never encountered opponents who could function in the crushing gravitational fields near a star. Their ships were designed for deep space combat, not the brutal environment where solar radiation could cook you alive in seconds. But humans had been born in a solar system with one of the most violent stars in the galaxy. Earth's sun regularly threw off magnetic storms that could fry electronics and radiation bursts that would sterilize most planets. To humans, fighting near a star wasn't suicide. It was home field advantage. Captain Lisa Parker, now commanding a small strike force of converted cargo ships, watched her tactical display as Drachner fighters tried to follow them into the solar wind. "Watch and learn, boys," she muttered. The alien fighters started experiencing system failures as soon as they entered the radiation field. Their organic technology, evolved on a world with a stable star, simply couldn't handle the electromagnetic chaos. One by one, they began spinning out of control. But the humans were just getting started. Commander Rachel Foster, leading a boarding party aboard her ship Defiance, suited up in what the Drachner would later call death armor, standard human EVA suits that could function in hard vacuum, extreme radiation, and temperature swings that would kill most organic life. "Remember," Foster told her team as they prepared to launch, "these things evolved on a stable world. They've never had to deal with anything like the stuff we grew up with." The human assault shuttles didn't bother with docking procedures. They simply rammed through the Drachner hull and began cutting their way inside. The Drachner crew, expecting civilized boarding procedures, found themselves facing humans who treated vacuum exposure like a minor inconvenience. Sergeant David Wilson kicked through a breached airlock and found himself face to face with a Drachner warrior for the first time. The alien was massive, 8 feet tall, covered in black scales, with claws that could tear through steel. It snarled and charged, expecting to terrify this small creature from an unknown world. Wilson sidestepped the charge, grabbed the alien's arm, and used its own momentum to send it crashing into a bulkhead. "Sorry, pal," he said, "but we've been dealing with things that want to eat us since we figured out how to walk upright." The Drachner warrior struggled to understand what had just happened. It was the apex predator. Nothing should be able to overpower it. But this human had moved with the reflexes of something that had spent millions of years dodging everything from saber-toothed tigers to asteroid impacts. Across the ship, similar scenes played out. Drachner warriors, used to opponents who would freeze in terror at their appearance, found themselves fighting creatures who had evolved alongside megafauna, survived ice ages, and conquered a planet that tried to kill them every single day. But the real shock came when the humans started using the ship's own systems against it. Lieutenant Amy Richardson, Earth's top system specialist, had been studying the Drachner biological technology from captured databases. "Their ships are alive," she reported over the comm. "They're basically giant organisms with weapons grafted on." "Can you turn them against each other?" Wilson asked, still fighting his way through corridors filled with confused and increasingly desperate Drachner. "Even better," Richardson replied. "I can give them indigestion." She interfaced her portable computer with the ship's nervous system and began introducing what she casually called hostile bacteria, actually sophisticated computer viruses designed to mimic the kind of biological warfare that happened on Earth every time someone got food poisoning. The Drachner ship began consuming itself from the inside out. Within 6 hours, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was running away from converted human cargo ships. The survivors retreated to long-range communications and sent frantic messages to their high command. Admiral Hayes intercepted one of these transmissions and had it translated. The message was simple and terrifying. They are not prey. They are not predators. They are something else entirely. They fight like the void itself has come alive to destroy us. Captain Mike Johnson, commanding the converted mining ship Persistence, couldn't help but laugh when he heard that. Admiral, he called over Fleet Channel, I think we just became the stuff of nightmares. Hayes nodded grimly. Good. Let's make sure the whole galaxy knows what happens when you pick on people who can't fight back. The Battle of Tylon lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Drachner had lost their entire battle fleet. The humans had lost exactly 3 shuttles and a cargo bay. Word spread fast through galactic communication networks. The Drachner Empire, masters of the galaxy for 2 millennia, had been defeated by primitives from a death world that most species couldn't even visit without dying. But for the humans, it was just the beginning. They had 15 more Vialian worlds to liberate, and now they knew exactly how to do it. The galaxy's apex predators had finally met something more dangerous than themselves. Persistence hunters with moral code and absolutely no quit in them. 18 months after the first human ship entered Drachner space, Admiral Robert Hayes stood on the observation deck of humanity's first deep space station, watching something that shouldn't have been possible. Below them, the Vialian homeworld was alive again. Cities grew like forests from the scarred landscape. The 4-armed beings moved with joy instead of fear, their children playing in gardens that sparkled with bioluminescent flowers. Ships from dozens of species came and went peacefully, carrying trade goods and cultural exchanges instead of weapons and slaves. Hard to believe, isn't it? Said Ambassador Jennifer Campbell, joining Hayes at the massive viewport. She carried a data pad thick, with reports from across the galaxy. 6 months ago, this system was a graveyard. Now it's becoming the unofficial capital of the Free World Alliance. Hayes nodded, but his expression remained serious. What's the latest from the Outer Rim? Jennifer's smile faded. The Drachner remnants are still out there. Maybe 10% of their original fleet. Hiding in the dark between galaxies. They're calling us void demons in their transmissions. Some of their messages... She shuddered. They're terrified, Robert. Genuinely terrified. Good. Hayes replied without hesitation. Fear keeps predators honest. The war had lasted exactly 18 months, though calling it a war was generous. It had been more like an education. The Drachner Empire, which had dominated the galaxy for 2,000 years, simply couldn't adapt to fighting an enemy that treated their advantages as mild inconveniences. Colonel Mark Stevens entered the observation lounge, still wearing his combat fatigues from the latest liberation mission. As head of the newly formed Galactic Protection Initiative, he spent most of his time traveling between star systems, helping former Drachner slaves rebuild their civilizations. How did the Kelrani operation go? Hayes asked. Stevens sat down heavily, exhaustion clear in his voice. Same story as always. The Drachner had been harvesting them for 3 centuries. When we showed up, the survivors couldn't believe we were there to help. They kept waiting for the catch. It was a common reaction. Species across the galaxy had lived in fear for so long that the concept of altruistic intervention seemed impossible. Most civilizations that encountered humans for the first time assumed it was some kind of elaborate trap. The Kelrani offered us their entire mining operation. Stevens continued. Rare elements worth more than Earth's entire gross domestic product. When I told them we just wanted them to be free, their ambassador actually started crying. Hayes wasn't surprised. In the 18 months since humanity had entered galactic politics, they'd liberated 47 star systems, freed over 200 billion sentient beings, and refused payment from all of them. The galaxy was struggling to understand what kind of species would fight wars for other people's freedom without expecting anything in return. Elder Keth materialized as a hologram beside them, his blue skin glowing with health instead of the desperate pallor they'd first seen. Admiral Hayes, I bring greetings from the Vialian Council and news from our diplomatic missions. What's the word from the core worlds? Hayes asked. Confusion, mostly, Keth replied. The hegemony of advanced species has been debating your existence. For 6 months now, they cannot understand how a Class X death world produced spacefaring intelligence. Their xenobiologists insist it should be impossible. Captain Andrew Morgan, recently returned from patrol duty, laughed as he overheard. Maybe they should visit her sometime. Spend a week in Australia or the Amazon rainforest. That'll clear up their confusion real quick. Jennifer pulled up a holographic display showing the current galactic political map. What had once been solid red Drachner territory was now a patchwork of free systems, most of them under informal human protection. 14 more species have requested assistance in the last month alone, she reported. The Zethrak Confederation, the Crystal Singers of Proxima, and even the Hive Collective. That last one surprised me. I didn't think they were capable of asking for help. Hayes studied the map. Each liberated system represented millions or billions of lives saved from slavery or extinction. But he also knew that humanity's small fleet was stretched thin across hundreds of light years. We need to be careful, he said. We can't save everyone, and we can't be everywhere at once. If we spread ourselves too thin, we'll end up losing everything we've gained. Stevens nodded grimly. The intelligence reports suggest that some of the surviving predator species are starting to work together. The Vrak Empire, the Savage clans, maybe even some Drachner holdouts. They're calling it the Apex Alliance. Let them come, Morgan said, his voice hard. We've shown the galaxy what happens when bullies pick on peaceful people. If they want to test us directly, they're welcome to try. But it wasn't just military might that was changing the galaxy. Human technology, combined with knowledge freely shared by grateful alien civilizations, was creating unprecedented prosperity. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia were being cured. Agricultural techniques that could make desert worlds bloom were spreading across hundreds of systems. Energy technologies that eliminated the need for resource wars were becoming standard. There's something else, Jennifer said, pulling up another report. The Free Worlds Alliance wants to make you the official galactic protector. Every liberated species has signed the petition. Hayes shook his head. We're not conquerors, Jennifer. We're just people who help when help is needed. Elder Keth's hologram flickered with what humans had learned to recognize as amusement. Admiral, that is exactly why they want you in charge. For the first time in galactic history, there's a species powerful enough to enforce peace, but wise enough not to abuse that power. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Lieutenant Tom Anderson's voice came over the comm system. Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Triangulum Galaxy. Unknown species under attack by something called the Devourer Swarm. They're requesting immediate assistance. Hayes looked around at his assembled staff. Humans who had left behind comfortable lives on Earth to fight for people they'd never met. Aliens who had learned to trust again after centuries of fear, and representatives of dozens of species working together for the first time in galactic history. Well, he said, turning back toward command center, looks like our reputation is spreading. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We got work to do. As the human fleet prepared to leap across the void to another galaxy entirely, Elder Keth watched them with something approaching wonder. These strange creatures from the impossible death world had done something unprecedented. They had turned the galaxy's greatest strength, its capacity for violence, into a force of protection instead of domination. The universe would never be the same. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, former predators learned to sleep with one eye open, knowing that the void demons from Earth were watching.